Some people walk into a room and immediately notice what everyone else misses. A small change in someone's voice. A forced smile. A pause before they answer. The person who suddenly becomes quiet when someone else enters the room. You notice these things. You connect the dots. You can often sense that something has changed before anyone says a word. But here's the interesting part. You don't always say anything. You stay quiet. You observe. You listen. And sometimes, people mistake your silence for not caring. But what if your silence isn't a lack of awareness? What if it's actually the result of being highly aware? Because some people don't speak less because they have nothing to say. They speak less because they're still observing. And there are several psychological reasons why this happens. Most people react to situations almost automatically. Someone says something rude. They respond. Someone changes their attitude. They confront them. Someone becomes distant. They immediately ask what's wrong. But you may operate differently. You pause. You watch. You think. Why did their tone change? Did something happen? Is this actually about me? Am I seeing the whole picture? That small pause between what happens and how you respond can be powerful. It's related to self-regulation, the ability to manage your reactions instead of immediately acting on them. You aren't necessarily ignoring what happened. You're processing it. Imagine someone suddenly becomes cold toward you. Instead of immediately confronting them, you observe. Maybe they're stressed. Maybe something happened earlier. Maybe they're dealing with something completely unrelated to you. So you wait. You gather more information. That's observation. But there's an important difference. Observation helps you understand. Overthinking makes you create explanations without enough evidence. And knowing the difference is extremely important. Because being observant can be a strength. Until you start believing every thought your observation creates. One of the most interesting things about observant people is that they notice patterns. Not just individual moments. Maybe your friend always jokes when they're uncomfortable. Maybe someone becomes quiet whenever a certain subject comes up. Maybe someone repeatedly says they're fine, while their behavior suggests something different. You remember these little details. And eventually, they start connecting. One strange conversation might mean nothing. But when the same behavior happens again and again, you start noticing a pattern. This is why you may sometimes say, something feels different. But when someone asks you why, you can't immediately explain it. Your brain may have picked up on dozens of small signals without you consciously analyzing each one. A change in tone. A different facial expression. A shorter response. A repeated behavior. Your conscious mind notices the conclusion, while your brain has been collecting the clues in the background. But here's something even more interesting. You may not feel the need to tell people everything you notice. You could realize that someone is uncomfortable, and simply leave it alone. You could notice that someone's behavior has changed, without immediately confronting them. You could understand what someone is trying to do, without announcing that you figured them out. Why? Because you've learned that not every observation needs a reaction. Sometimes speaking helps. Sometimes speaking creates unnecessary conflict. And sometimes, silence allows you to see more clearly. When you don't immediately reveal what you've noticed, people continue behaving naturally. And that gives you more information. But remember, healthy silence is a choice. If you're staying silent because you're afraid to express yourself, that's different. The goal isn't to suppress everything you feel. The goal is to choose your response instead of reacting automatically. There's another reason you may notice so much. You may be highly aware of emotional changes. You notice when someone's mood shifts. You recognize when their laugh sounds different. You sense when someone seems uncomfortable, even when they say they're fine. This can be part of emotional awareness, the ability to recognize emotional information in yourself and other people. But there's a warning here. Being good at reading people doesn't mean you're always right. Someone being quiet doesn't automatically mean they're angry. Someone avoiding eye contact doesn't automatically mean they're lying. Someone sounding distant doesn't automatically mean they dislike you. Observation gives you clues. It doesn't give you certainty. And this is where mature observation becomes powerful. Instead of thinking, I know exactly what's going on, you think, I noticed something changed. I wonder why. That small shift from certainty to curiosity can prevent a lot of unnecessary conflict. You aren't assuming. You're investigating the situation with an open mind. And this may also explain why you're selective about who you trust. You don't necessarily trust people because of what they say. You watch what they repeatedly do. You notice whether their actions match their words. You observe how they treat people who can't offer them anything. You notice how they behave when they're frustrated. And slowly, you decide how much of yourself you're comfortable sharing. That's not necessarily being suspicious. It's understanding that trust is usually built through consistency. Words can create an impression. Repeated behavior creates evidence. But there's one hidden danger for people who notice everything. You can become so good at analyzing other people that you start analyzing everything. A message feels slightly different. You replay the conversation. Someone doesn't respond the way you expected. You search for a hidden meaning. Someone looks at you differently. And suddenly, you're no longer simply observing. You're overthinking. Your greatest strength becomes exhausting. So remember this. You don't have to solve every mystery. Sometimes a strange tone is just a strange tone. Sometimes someone's silence has nothing to do with you. Sometimes people are simply tired, distracted, or having a difficult day. Not every signal requires an explanation. The goal isn't to notice less. The goal is to interpret what you notice more carefully. So if you're someone who notices everything but says very little, don't automatically assume there's something wrong with you. Maybe you prefer understanding before reacting. Maybe you notice patterns that others overlook. Maybe you've learned that silence can sometimes reveal more than confrontation. And maybe you simply don't feel the need to announce every thought that crosses your mind. But remember, being observant doesn't mean you have to carry everyone else's emotions. You can notice someone's sadness without becoming responsible for fixing it. You can recognize someone's behavior without obsessing over its meaning. You can understand people without losing yourself in them. And perhaps the real strength isn't being able to notice everything. It's knowing what deserves your attention, what deserves your response, and what is better left alone. Because sometimes the quietest person in the room isn't missing what's happening. They're noticing it all. They just understand that not everything needs to be said. If this video made you see your silence differently, and you enjoy psychology that helps you understand yourself and other people, consider subscribing. Because there's always another hidden pattern of the human mind waiting to be understood. Maybe your silence isn't emptiness. Maybe it's awareness. And maybe learning when to speak, and when to simply observe, is one of the most underrated forms of emotional intelligence.